Benedict Spence, a very good afternoon. How are you, my friend?
I'm well, thanks, Jeremy. How are you doing?
Good. Where do you want to start? Israel and Hamas have reached a ceasefire deal to end 15 months of war. The Israelis will say, quite rightly, I believe, that Hamas is destroyed and on its knees. Hamas will say that the world is anti what Israel's done. They've committed war crimes. Donald Trump will arrive on Monday and say, see, I told him I'll open the gates of hell. It's all sorted. Biden will say it's all done. That's my legacy. The reality is we are inching closer to peace, Benedict.
I mean, for the time being. Hamas has been devastated. It's not gone away, though. There is still enough there for it to be of a major concern. Donald Trump, you're right to point this out, Donald Trump needs this win because one of the big things that sort of went against the Biden administration was lots of very pro-Palestinian Democrat voters and Muslim Americans criticizing the Biden administration for not being able to strong-arm Israel into stopping what it was doing in Gaza. It lost a lot of support on that basis, whereas Donald Trump was able to pick up a lot of those votes by saying, I'll get a deal done in the first week, and it looks as if that might be happening. And from what you hear of what's going on behind the scenes, it does sound like there was quite a bit of strong arming going on from the incoming Trump administration. The reasons for that are very obvious. He needs to say to his voters, I got an easy early win, especially seeing as Ukraine might prove a little bit more difficult.
It's interesting, though. It tells you everything that you need to know. It's certainly what I'm keen to do. Other networks aren't doing this. They're doing a big thing on this. I think we need to just watch this detail as it comes out. We have to bear in mind that the Israelis, their government is not voting on this tomorrow. More details will emerge. You're right. Let's be honest. The Israelis could vote against it. Hamas could pull out at the last minute. We don't know, but that is where we are at. And US President-elect Donald Trump says we have a deal. They will be released shortly. Let's talk about domestically something that is causing me, I don't know, not to sleep at night. I'm starting to get really quite wound up about this. How bloody incompetent is our Prime Minister? 3 more examples of the flip-flopping idiot today, or the pillock as I now call him. The Chagos Islands, a British colony. 4 years, nothing to do with Mauritius. Strategically for the order of the world, a very important part of the military strength of the Western world for not only the Americans but also the Europeans. Starmer, in his globalist way, has decided some weeks ago or months ago to give it away, he and his foreign secretary, to Mauritius. And also, because they haven't got much money, to give them £9 billion. Mauritius quite close to China. Several cynical people saying, why would you do that? That's utterly ludicrous. Today, he's ditched attempts to get this done before the Trump returns on Monday, saying, and I quote, we'd like the president-elect to look it over. Well, the president-elect's going to tell him where to shove this deal as far as the sun don't shine, because he wants the Chagos Islands, and so do we. This is Starmer yet again flip-flopping because he's as weak as anything, isn't he?
Unbelievably weak. I mean, the thing with this is Mauritius might well have shot themselves in the foot here by, after having got this deal secured, you know, they get ownership of the Chagos Islands, we get a 99-year lease of Diego Garcia, and they get $9 billion. They basically turned around and went, do you know what? We reckon we can shake these people down for a little bit more. Let's get the money up, and let's get that lease down from 99 years to 50 years. Oh, and also let's have it included as part of the nuclear non-proliferation zone, so the US can't actually, you know, land any B-52s there. I think they've overplayed their hand slightly, and I think it says a lot that Starmer and Labour were prepared to still run with this deal, even on those terms. But the point is, the only thing that Labour could turn around and say was good about this deal was we've secured the future of the base on Diego Garcia for a century. Once that's down to 50 years and no nuclear capabilities there at all of a sudden you kind of sat there going, right, what was the point of that? You know, even if that was the objective, you've now lost that. And now frankly, it is humiliating that the President of the United States can then turn around and go, I might veto this deal. Although slightly less humiliating, I suppose, than Donald Trump just going, do you know what? We're just going to take this island because you people don't seem to know what to do with it. But I suppose there is a slight chink of success here for Starmer, or at least how he will view it.
Really?
Which is that he will be able to say, look, I wanted to go ahead with this deal, but the President of the United States is on a bit of an acquisitional streak with Greenland and Panama and all of these things. I didn't have any say, and he'll try to paint this to his own voters as, look, this is that nasty old Donald Trump throwing his weight around, but we've got to play nice with the Americans because we have to be the grown-ups and we have to be diplomatic.
Well, so no acknowledgement that it's the wrong decision then? Not any acknowledgement from Starmer that actually it's the wrong decision giving away, you know, British islands that for money that we can't afford when we can't afford to look after our own people. That's ludicrous. There's £9 billion that could pay for farmers and pensioners. Mauritius doesn't need that. They'll probably give it to China anyway. That's a ludicrous way of looking at it, isn't it?
But the thing is, we have to remember here, Keir Starmer, David Lammy, a lot of the members of the Labour Party frontbench, they are human rights lawyers, and they view the world through the prism not of what is best for the UK, but what is best for human rights.
Do you think they hate the UK?
I don't think they hate the UK. I think they don't care about the UK. I think it's worse. I think that they're prepared to cast it into the wilderness, cast things aside. As long as human rights comes first, then Britain is expendable. I think that that's actually, at least if there was hatred there, at least you could say there's some sort of motivation. I think they just don't care.
Well, listen, this is really interesting because the next thing, of course, is his outrage caused today as his quest of human rights gathered some pace. There was this piece of legislation to be introduced by the Tories at the back end of their government, which basically was dealing with the troubles in Northern Ireland, and it was dealing with, you know, the rights of soldiers. And it turned out this morning, I mean, there we go again, flip-flop, that one of the pieces of legislation being slashed by this government would have resulted in potentially the head of the Sinn Fein organisation, who spent some time in custody when he was accused of being involved in the bombing of innocent people and being part of the IRA, Gerry Adams, could, if this is thrown out, sue the British government, i.e. us, the bloody taxpayer, for hundreds of thousands of pounds. Did you hear the call on Mike Graham's breakfast show?
I missed that, I'm afraid.
Have you got it for me, right? Because I'm playing this every hour because I think it's really important. This is a call from a guy called Andy, whose neighbour was a serving soldier. Listen to what happened to him, but more importantly, listen to the anger, Benjamin, in Benedict even, in it's good of Netanyahu. Listen to the anger in this man's voice. Play it, Ames, please.
I myself never served in the forces, but my good friend and next door neighbour did, and he was in the Royal Marines, and he played for the band. In 1989, when the IRA detonated a bomb and killed 11 of his friends and colleagues and injured 20-odd others, he's now left on the shelf, PTSD, alcoholism, and he's basically got nothing. And Starmer wants to start giving money to Gerry Adams. I tell you what, Mike, it makes my bloody blood boil. It really does.
Understandable the frustration. People who have served for this country and put their necks on the line, feeling that they're second-class citizens. But that, in fact, is rather reminiscent of what so many people feel now. What do we get this afternoon, Benedict? We get him doing a U-turn, old Starmer, and going, no, I don't want Gerry Adams to get compensation. You are so right. This quest to appease and be a human rights lawyer and do everything for everybody but real victims and real people who need help will be the undoing, if it isn't the undoing of them already, for goodness sake.
It will be, and that is exactly what we're talking about right here, is that certain people's human rights, because it sort of meets a certain legal criteria, they have to be prioritized. And this is the sort of thing that I agree. I believe Starmer when he says, I don't want Gerry Adams to get compensation. He hasn't thought about it in those terms. No. That's the problem. He hasn't thought about it for 2 seconds, how this would look. And then too late, when the news comes out, he goes, oh, this isn't good. I'm going to have to do something.
But this is my point. You'd know more than me. Why is there nobody around this pillock or government saying that's how it's going to be perceived? That's how it sounds. That's how it looks.
Yeah, the problem is that the Labour Party is, I mean, the modern Labour Party is completely deaf and blind to what its core constituents should be. It has completely lost sight of its core mission. I know it might be going back a little bit, it might be a bit unfashionable, but the point of the Labour movement was to stand up for and represent the urban working class of this country. They were the urban and the working people of this country. They simply don't do that anymore. The working people, the ordinary people, come last because that is
why they lost in 2019. This assumption, if you're Labour, that you're always going to have that working class vote. Boris Johnson won it by talking to that red wall. This election, they got them back. But I just, on a daily basis, I want to throw into the mix before you go 2 stories that send me through the roof. The BBC today criticised again Benedict for hiring a new boss at its world news operation who previously, when he was in charge in Canada of the BBC, and bear in mind that George Aki is the new head of editorial quality and compliance at BBC World Service, instructed all of his journalists to not call Hamas a terrorist organisation. Again, really? Honestly?
I mean, whereas I say that the Labour leadership doesn't hate Britain, it just simply doesn't care. I do think it's slightly different for certain elements of the BBC. I think the BBC Not the organisation as a whole, but a lot of people who work within it do actually view British culture, Western history as some sort of fundamentally very evil thing. And they see everything through the prism of that word decolonisation and the other one justice. And, again, this goes back to actually how we got to the position with the Chagos Islands, is that, lots of people were sort of championing this on the basis that it was about decolonisation and reparations. Well, there's far too much of that, frankly, that goes on at the BBC. And when it comes specifically to the issue of Israel and Palestine, very stupid people with no concept of history look at the fact that what has been happening very recently is, is sort of viewed through a prism that paints Israel as the bad white colonizers and the Palestinians as the noble savages. That old trope that I thought we'd done away with about half a century ago, and that therefore there is only one morally good side and one morally bad side, and it's the white people, the Jewish people, that are the bad ones, and that no matter what happens from the Palestinian side, that it must always be thus. And it's that blind spot, I think, at the BBC that, as you say, it just grates with people, and it makes ordinary people think they are not impartial, they are not actually acting in our best interest. We were talking about the government of this country. This is the broadcasting company of this country that we are forced by law to pay for if we want to view any.
I can't see that surviving. I think this is another nail in the coffin for the BBC licence fee. I think it's an absolute bleeding joke. I'm so sorry that we were supposed to get you on and 2 hours late. I don't take any blame for this. I blame Ryan squarely, who's now looking very hacked off. Benedict, thank you so much indeed. Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator, talking about all things that have been happening now.